The Case of Professor Abash, Part 2, Accountability and Entities. Okay, let's get started. Our first step in applying the map is to identify all of the accountability systems in play. An accountability system is a web of reports, incentives, and controls that shape behavior. Reports tell us what has been, what is, what will be. Incentives tie reports to rewards and punishment. Controls make some things easier and others harder. Note that in the image on the right, reports are the largest gear, followed by controls and then incentives. That's because you can never allow incentives to overpower the other two. You'll just encourage people to cheat. So here's the first question we ask as we follow the map. What accountability systems do the parties operate within, design, or enforce? Are there other accountability systems that aren't mentioned but are important? I'm going to give you a few seconds to find the pause button so you can answer on your own before hearing my thoughts. Okay, here we go. So here's how I see it. A grading system is definitely an accountability system. Professor Abash designed it and enforces it, and the students operate within it. Reports tell him how students are doing and ideally whether they're living up to the honor code. Grades serve as incentives, and controls ideally make it hard to cheat. And here the map highlights the big problem in this case. Before we even get to questions of morality and academic integrity, Professor Abash designed a lousy system that encourages people to cheat. The high-stakes exam ramps up the incentives, but there are basically no reports that will tell him if students are cheating and no controls that make cheating hard. Ouch. Now, Professor Abash also operates within an accountability system that is managed by his university. And what's most relevant here is how they hold him accountable for his teaching. And here the map points us to another problem. Most universities give faculty enormous discretion in how they design their accountability systems, and there aren't many punishments for making unforced errors like we see from Professor Abash. There's another accountability system here which the students themselves design, enforce, and operate within. Students encourage one another to help one another and discourage them from doing things like whistleblowing that undermine cooperation. This is a pretty informal system, but we all know that students track one another's behavior and find small ways to reward and punish, like shout-outs and call-outs and offering and withholding friendship. The rest of the map is going to limit how we can hold the parties accountable and still be moral about it. To play off that famous line from the TV show Breaking Bad, we don't just need a moral accountability system, we need a moral accountability system. The first step toward a moral accountability system is to make sure we aren't punishing one person for what another totally unrelated person did. The map next takes us to the question of who can be held accountable for someone else's behavior. The entity principle answers questions like this by defining an accountable entity as any entity that has an internal accountability system. If you have a group of people who are all connected by an accountability system, there's an entity that can be held accountable. And someone who plays a role in designing or enforcing that system can be held personally accountable for the behavior of the larger entity. So here's the next question in the map. Does the entity principle allow us to hold any of the parties accountable for the behavior of any other party? Again, I'll wait while you pause the video so you can answer this on your own. My answer to this question is yes, we can hold Professor Abash accountable for the actions of his students because he designed his grading system and he enforces it to shape the behavior of his students. So even though it's the students who cheat, the entity principle lets us hold the professor accountable for their misbehavior. I would argue that there's also an accountability system that links the students together. Now, this is pretty explicit in your Americas program because it's so team-based. I mean, you even spell out contracts on who's supposed to do what and have ways to hold one another accountable in a formal way. Your teams are definitely entities, and that's one reason it makes sense for faculty to hold you accountable as a team for team assignments. But excuse me, but this case seems more like a traditional class where students are connected only very loosely. They'll offer friendship and favors to those who are helpful and withhold them from those who aren't. They might even retaliate against Dave for tattling to the professor. But that's overall a pretty weak system, and without any evidence of retaliation, I'm going to say that we can't hold one student accountable for another's behavior.